Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has kind of snuck up on us. It's almost the end of the year and it releases on March 25th, a few months away, and we've barely heard anything about it. We know it's a Borderlands-like looter shooter set in a fantasy world narrated by Tiny Tina, and we know it's a standalone experience, and we know it's gonna have a lot of cool quirks, but what else do we know? Well, in this video, I'm going to run through the game board, melee weapons, spell books, customization, voice acting, items, and more, so buckle up. Before we start, take a look at this. It's the Mass Effect Legendary Cache. It contains, among other things, this sweet N7 helmet that can glow both Paragon and Renegade. To win this now unobtainable mint condition collector's item, all you need to do is, well, be a regular on the channel and my socials. Yep, well, that's it. Comment and like and follow on each new video or post, and at the end of the year, I'll pick a random using an app. Check out the comment below for more information. Good luck, guys. There were rumors that you could dynamically change the environment by changing things in the overworld, like knocking over a can to make a river. That was dismissed by Matt Cox, the creative director. He says, "It's really the context of Tina narrating the game, because there's even a Cheeto that's left on the board and she has to pretend like she totally meant to leave the Cheeto there because she gets called out, like, did you just leave a Cheeto on the board? And she says, no, that's not me." And it becomes a whole dungeon quest. So it's really at the wiles of what Tina decides to do. What that says to me is don't go into this with grand dynamic world dreams. It's a game driven by narrative, but that's not a bad thing. This way the designers can focus on making a great experience instead of bogging it down with gimmicks that fail to hit the mark. Matt Cox also explained that this could be your first Borderlands universe experience and you'll be just fine. You won't need to have played any other game. With that being said, there will be little tidbits and nuggets of information with Borderlands if you keep your eyes out, but overall, it will be a standalone experience. I see this as Gearbox's venture into a new IP, dipping their toes into fantasy before taking a full swan dive. Let's venture into the realm of melee weapons now. It seems we'll be getting the same level of tech we saw with weapons in the Borderlands titles as we will be for melee weapons and even spells and armor. Matt Cox says, "We wanted to have the same procedural tech that drives our guns also drive our spellbooks and our melee weapons, and to some degree, our armor as well. So it's made up of a bunch of different pieces that can all get mixed and matched together depending on rarity. They all roll very similar to guns. So it was very important to us that the types of loot that people are used to in our brand of game aren't just like little orbs of something. It's actually loot that you find that rolls with different parts." Art director Adam May steps in and says, "We could go on for hours and hours about it. Borderlands had a lot of loot. Wonderlands is unbelievable. We added several new types of loot that Borderlands didn't even have. We have amulets and rings, as well as whole armor gear sets for characters that we call armor, but it's actually not technically like armor, it's more like a cosmetic effect that holds extra perks for your character classes. There's just a whole slew of them, and they have different visual styles that you get to customize on top of all the customizations in the character creator, and man, our character creator has so many options in it. What's really neat about it too is that all the extra cosmetic options are actually part of our loot loop. So you start the game with a whole lot of really cool options, but since you can change and update your visual representations in the game from a new use station as you play through, that's actually part of the loop as well. So we have really epic skins and cosmetic options like whole head styles and skin styles, where it's not just like colors, but actual materials where you can have diamond skin or gold skin or glowy skin. And with our characters, we didn't want you to just be stuck to standard fantasy classes. This is a whole new world, so you can be fish people or dragon people or orcs or really anything you want. The amount of customization we unlock for the player is ridiculous. We even have asymmetry. You can take one eye and move it off and make it big and googly as well. So there's just a limitless number of different customization between the tattoos and the helmets and the hats and the hair and the makeups, and yeah, it's just endless. Now, there's a lot to break down here. First, we can expect the same level of procedural generation for melee weapons and spells, meaning there will be even more interesting combinations or builds you'll be able to make. For example, a gun feeding into a spell which feeds into your melee for big damage bursts. Keep in mind that, as I explained in my last video, there will be attributes in Wonderlands that affect your character. So these items could also boost those stats, adding yet another layer. Adam also confirmed that there will be amulets, rings, as well as cosmetic pieces. So these jewelry pieces will contain more ways to customize with their own stats, and these cosmetic pieces will have slots to add perks. Perks that most likely play off your character class abilities and skills. So combat wise, you're going to have more ways than ever to be unique and build the best character for you. Speaking of unique though, the cosmetic options seem to be a lot more vast than they were in Borderlands as well. Instead of just your skins you place over your character, you'll have individual components such as skin types, head styles, tattoos, helmets, hats, makeup and more. You can be a fish, a dragon, or even an orc person. You can even play with asymmetry and make one eye bigger than the other like Klungo from Banjo-Kazooie. Your character will even have its own dialogue, fully voiced, that's customizable. Matt Cox adds, and it goes even further because you'll be able to choose your different personalities in the character creators. So we have different personalities and different voice actors that voice these personalities. So Brave, for instance, has 2 different voice actors you can choose from, and you have a pitch slider so you can slightly change the pitch of the actual actor. So you can really dial in how you want to sound with the choices that we've given you. Adam May continues, something really fun that I personally was really concerned about at the beginning of the project, because we've done such a good job in the Borderlands universe of making characters feel like they have character, both in the way they look and their voices and everything. That was a real challenge. If you're able to create anything, how do we actually make sure you don't just end up in a generic sort of grey space if you can modify all those things? You can make as unique and wild looking characters as you want, but the voice adds so much to it. It really does let you create a character inside the game that says and reacts to things as you play, that makes it just fun to even listen to yourself talk. So like a lot of deep RPGs, you can choose your voice. Stern male, brave male, for example, are options I've seen before. However, instead of just changing the grunts and battle cries of your character, these characters will be fully voiced by actors to respond to the world as Tina plays it out. You won't be a voiceless wonder. Your character will have personality. Now, if that means that different personalities will have different voice lines, it remains to be seen. But that would be quite a bit of work, so I doubt it. Now, we were speculating in my last video on if melee weapons will be equipable like, well, guns are, or if they would be a single button press secondary weapon that you whip out like in Borderlands. It seems, like we assumed, that it is a button press. Matt explains, the mechanic was overall the same, but the utility and usefulness of melee is so much more than it was in previous games. For instance, you can collect blunt swords, axes, and other different types of weapons. And all of these have different speeds, power, and bonuses. For instance, you can find bonuses on melee weapons that return ammo or spell cooldowns. So if you get into this combat loop where you love spells and you want them to cool down as quickly as possible, you're going to search for that piece of melee gear that returns that to you. You'll be pressing the melee button way more than before, but it's still a secondary ability. Over the course of development, we've been tuning this loop. People really start to integrate melee weapons and spells in a variety of different ways, so melee is much more important, but it's still very action focused for sure. Gabrielle, the senior level designer, goes on to say, and also, that's why you want to melee in the overworld, because as soon as we start using it in first person, it started to feel so right. And when we were trying the random encounter system, the first thing we had in terms of design was either you engage or you avoid them. I don't want to avoid people in this game, I want to punch them. It's just the way I want to deal with them. So we used that feature right away in the overworld and it felt so right. So yes, melee is still the dedicated button and you can't hold a melee weapon out with you like it's a gun, but it seems like they'll be getting the same treatment as guns have in the past. We've already seen melee weapons and spellbooks dropping off enemies in the loot explosions, but now it's confirmed they will do things like return ammo and lower spell cooldowns. As I mentioned, you'll have more of a trinity of weapons now you can get working together. Before it was just your guns, now it's guns, melee weapons and spells, not to mention your skill tree, which Gearbox has confirmed is much richer and crosses classes together. I never really used melee weapons a whole lot in any of the Borderlands series unless I had skills in a tree dedicated to buffing it, but it's exciting to see how this change will swing the formula for me. So that's all I have for you today. What did you think? Are you excited for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands? Let me know below. Don't forget to do the typical YouTube stuff to keep me in the game, and stay tuned for more Wonderlands info. Ciao friends.